I'm recalling the incident of our residence on Woodlawn Avenue when I was about 4, and Bob being 17 months older than me, we were engaged in doing some playground construction next to our home on Woodlawn, and that's where Bob actually was using a hatchet, and we didn't have anything else, and I was using my hands, and we were not synchronized, so to speak, and that's when I got cracked across the knuckles there, and I still bear the scar to this day. And another incident happened there that I have a vivid recollection of what happened on a summer day when there was a heavy shower. Ed was there, and Bob was there, and I was the little guy on the end of the deal, and there was heavy rainfall coming down the gutter, and the gutter was actually concrete or tarvia. It was actually like bricks on both sides and curved, and there was a heavy flow of water, so Ed was engaged in making a dam with some sand debris that came down, and Bob and I were down below, and we were doing something that was not proper for whatever his project was, and he had taken one of the pebbles about the size of a marble, and not realizing what he was doing, he threw it down there, and I got hit in the eye. Now, what followed that was, I remember getting hit in the eye, I remember crying and that, but later on when we were visiting, when I was a little bit older, after my dad died, we were in Aunt Addie's down in Burnbank, and Mom would go down there with us on Sundays, and in conversation that passed on with Harry Austin and the family, Aunt Annie and Mom told me at the time that when Ed accidentally threw that, and they exonerated him, but Aunt Annie at the time had been nursing Mickey, my cousin, my girl cousin, and so she told me the first aid things that they applied at the time. She was well endowed, and she had a well-equipped dairy bar, and Mom says, oh yeah, Nance actually helped wash out the sand that was around that pebble out of your eye by just pressing her breast and washing it out with breast milk. And I guess they didn't have any 9/11 of those days, so that didn't bother my eyesight in one bit. So that was an incident that happened to me. Besides, and then after that incident, when we were over on Price Avenue, the residence where Dad died, the 4th of July before that, the 4th of July would have been 1919. And Harry Austin, the friend of the family that stayed with Aunt Annie, he was there to make sure that the Doherty kids had a little celebration for the 4th of July. And we were sitting on the curb watching across the street, from our residence across the street, and there was a telephone pole there. Harry Austin had a big cardboard carton with some sparklers and some other flower pots and that, and he also had one big pinwheel that he drove onto the pole, and it spun around, and it had like firecrackers about 5 or 6 places, and probably it was a pentagon maybe, and he forgot to remove the box from under the pole there where he was, and he lit it to make it a beautiful display for us to watch, and we saw that beautiful pinwheel floating around on the pole, but the discharge from that ignited everything else down below, and we had a real good display. He was no pyrotechnician, but he had sense enough, and he was sort of a gimp-leg person, and he got the hell out of there right now. And those are vivid things that I can remember. The activities of the war years on the front part of the hill, that is from Matson Place back Price Avenue down West 8th Street and that was the area going down Price Avenue to the school in Hawthorne Avenue where the church was. But going back up Hawthorne Avenue, the street on which I was born, and this is something that had to be told to me. But it was really interesting because I was part of the incident that happened, and so was Bob. It was in 1915. There was a tornado came through Cincinnati at the time, and you're 17 months older than me, and I was about 17. That was not quite 4 years old, and we were just, there was not much traffic there, so we were just wandering down towards Dempsey Park. There was no buildings across the street from us, just an embankment that you went down, and there was a ball field, and we came back up. Lived in the neighborhood, came down and got the both of us and brought us back up because they had gotten word, and I don't think they even had a radio then, that there was a tornado approaching the town, and they got us back up to home where Mom was. And at that time, Dad was just not coming through with good health. That was he was starting to decline then, and so it was during that period, following that, in the evening, tailwinds or whatever you want to call from it, we were all in bed up on the second floor at Hawthorne Avenue, and the high winds literally took the roof off the house and laid it right down on the front lawn. And with the rain coming in, and Ed spoke up to Mom and wondered about the rain coming in. But before the rain came in, Mom was running through the room with holy water, sprinkling all of us because they knew that there was something going on out there, lightning and thunder and that. But we got a sprinkling of holy water before the roof got laid off at the top of the house on the front lawn, and we all had to be brought downstairs, and while the salvage corps and everybody else responded to cover up the second floor. So that was a nice little incident for us to have. And from that point on, everything went into my involvement in going to school early in 1919 because the nuns wanted to help Mom. Problem with it. After that, we just decided, well, I didn't have anything to do with the decision, but Mom and them decided that they'd leave Price Hill because she had some relatives that lived out in the East End. And they had an apartment or a flat, so to speak, in those days, and thought it would be best for Mame and her boys to come out there because we were probably paying more rent there at the home where Dad died, and she had to adjust her financial status to meet everything that was coming on. So that's why we departed Price Hill and moved to the East End. In the East End, at the 3rd and Eastern Avenue is what it was called, and I was enrolled in All Saints School. I started putting my years in at All Saints School, my 8 years there. Everything worked towed into one another real nice. I enjoyed myself there. It was very wonderful years, and all the fellows that I had made friends with, and all the girls who went to school with me. And we lived at the foot of Eden Park, and where we were in this flat building, there was no yard, nothing at all like that. The red bricks in the back to walk out, so we had a big set of wooden stairs and walkway that went all the way up to Eden Park. And that's what we'd make the trek up to school, after school, all the way up to Eden Park, right alongside the big pump house there that was by the 2 reservoirs, and there was an area called Half Acre. And we played ball in there, we tossed football in there, and we were never run out by the police or anything like that because we kept ourselves pretty well contained in that area. When things were over, we went back down home and did whatever was necessary. In fact, when I got old enough to maybe 10 or 11 years old, I was carrying my own paper route up there. And you had a certain number of customers that actually paid you 12 cents a week. I paid a cent and a fifth for each paper and I sold it to them for 2 cents. So I made 4/5 of a cent on each paper, and I had just a little bit of money that I brought home each week. I think I had 37 customers, and those customers were spread out over an area from the foot of Kemper Lane and Eastern Avenue. There was a grocery store that George Wilson was the man that operated it, and that's where I would pick up my papers. Then I would walk my route down Eastern Avenue to Weeks Street, and on the corner of Weeks Street and Eastern was Robert Fulton School. And I would turn up Weeks Street to Gladstone Avenue. And the first customer at the top on the other side of the street, there was an old fella in there that was one of my customers, and he wasn't bad for paying every week 12 cents. But all of a sudden he started getting ill. And I let him go for 1 week, it was 12 cents, and then next week it was 24 cents. Well, I couldn't stand extending credit that long for 24 cents, so I complained to the Newsboys Protective Association. We had little badges that looked like a policeman's badge, and you got them from City Hall. You were registered, and I complained to them that I think that this man should be told to pay me up. So by the time one of their investigators got out there, old man, his name was M-A-N-N, he died. That was a total loss for me, and he died from using canned heat. In other words, he was just processing it to get the alcohol out of the canned heat, and it was poisonous. So that was the end of him. The first extension of credit I ever had, I lost on the deal. So I walked down Gladstone Avenue, covering all the rest of my customers and everything, and I come down to what was then Washington Avenue. That was run down to 3rd Street and 3rd and Eastern, and it's called Baines Place. And I'd stop off there and stop in the summertime to open up the top icer ice box and pull out an ice quart jar that Mom made root beer. And I'd get recharged with a glass of root beer and then carry on the rest of my paper route on up to school. The sister's house was the last customer on my route. But midway up on 3rd Street was a residence, and you went up the steps to the wall, and on the first floor was some people in there. They were not my customer, but the people on the 2nd floor, the man's name was Harry Doss, and he was the pilot of the Island Queen. And I played my cards right there, because every day, instead of just throwing a newspaper up there, I would carry it up a set of stairs in the back and take it and lay it in front of the door on their back porch. So around Christmas time, when it came for the boys to get something for their little Christmas gift, Mrs. Doss would always give me a box of black cow suckers. They were a caramel sucker, large. I think they sold for a nickel, and 24 of them to a box. That was 24 count, and I could look forward to having that all the time. And incidentally, when we'd go up on a school picnic on the Island Queen, and you'd go up on the top deck where there's, I think they call it above the Texas deck, all the kids would be looking up and seeing Captain Doss up there in the pilot house with that big wheel spinning there to the left and to the right. And then when he had it locked on straight course and that, he'd come out there. And boy, did I feel big, because he could recognize, boy, give me the old sign to come on up there. And boy, those kids would look over, who is this guy that has all the... And I would go up to see him. And I was interested in seeing how he didn't use to have to pull a big wheel. He used two control arms on the side like that to give left rudder or right rudder. But that was an experience right there. Even Homer Denny knew me from being up there with Captain Doss, and he was the Calliope player on there. So those are interesting deals all along my time up there in the East End. And after that, in 1928, after I came out of All Saints School, is when Uncle Dan O'Dowd asked Mom if she would look after Pat O'Dowd. Her mother died. Dan had custody of her then. If she would look after Pat until she got along with her studies and everything and lived with us. So they rented a place up on 3211 West State Street. And so that's why we left the West End in the East End in 1928 and moved to 3211 West State Street. And after we were up there from 1928 on up to 31 when I met Mother, and then I lived there until the time we got married in 38, and then we went into our own residence. So there was some nice times up there. There were some rough times too, but I only like to highlight the good ones. When we look back at the area of the overlooked lake in Eden Park, it really was a nice place for all young boys and girls to spend their childhood up there, because it was a beautiful surrounding, and there was no Mirror Lake then. That was a big reservoir, and many a time there was an unfortunate body pulled out of those deep waters over there. It was in the later years that that top reservoir, the top Mirror Lake, was put on there. That's a concrete layer with just a certain footage of water in it. But prior to that, up by the old flower house, before you get to that bridge that goes over to the tower in Eden Park, the lakes were out there, and they were very nice. And in the summertime, just to be doing something during vacation, we would go up there, and a couple of us would be waiting in there. So Joe Joskin and I were waiting to go from one shore to the other, not very far, maybe about 20 feet from one side to another. We were walking or wading across there with mud on our toes and everything, and I stepped on something that was metal and reached down in it. We pulled out a metal boat. It was like a liner. It was about that long, and it actually was a replica of one of the big ocean liners, and it was down there by many a season, I say, and there was still a key sticking down one of the smokestacks that it had to operate the propeller, and it was painted gray, and you couldn't do it because it was all crudted with mud and everything like that. But we had taken it out and taken it down to the flower house and used one of the faucets on the side to rinse it out and everything, but we still couldn't get it going because I think the spring and the whole thing. But we deduced that that was one of the rich kids from Walnut Hills was out there, and whatever caused it to be sunk, we thought there was an open hatch on the top, but I don't ever know what happened to that later on. But little did I realize that later on, when they enlarged that same lake over there and I put a concrete bottom in it, that I'd be back with that sailboat reenacting that scene again, you know. And it's strange how those things take you back. Then right up on the point up there, there's a obelisk. It's like the Washington Monument, only smaller, and it's up on the very peak there, overlooking the lake and overlooking the Ohio River. And well, I remember that though, 1929, the dedication of the channelization of the Ohio River at a certain stage. I don't know if it was a 9-foot stage or a little bit better. And we went up there. I was up there on my bike because President Herbert Hoover was there, coming to dedicate that monument, marking the channelization of the Ohio River. And we could look down, and there was a flotilla of a lot of steamboats actually going up and down, blasting their whistles to celebrate the occasion. So it was another thing to do, to be around, to be there to help it. And you were there, like Walter Cronkite would say. Then right down the road from there, they called it Winding Way, and it run right parallel to the roadway that goes up to the flower house. This was on a higher elevation there in front of the old pump house. They called Winding Road, and it was at that spot right there in front of that old pump house that George Remus shot and killed his wife Imogene Remus. And as soon as school was out, boy, we got the word, and boy, we hit up there for the spot to see what happened. There was a murder committed up there and everything, and the sheriff's deputies and everybody was around there trying to get us kids out of there because we heard that the guy threw the pistol over into the side in the hillside, and we were down there trying to locate it. We got run out of that place by the cops at that time, but we were, again, part of a big thing that took place down there in Eden Park. So we had a real good, happy playground when we were kids, although around our house we only have a 10 by 12 patch there, but we had the whole of Eden Park, you know. Even up in that tower, the one that was at that time, it was an observation arch bridge that went across the roadway, and that was another place for us to explore. And it was bolted at the bottom because I think at the turn of the century they stopped using that as an observation tower, but it was a challenge to us, and I don't know who the fellow was, or one of the guys from our gang threw a rope up there with like an anchor section on it up through one of the narrow passages that you could look in there because there's no glass in there anymore, but down on the front was actually a barred, big heavy padlock on it and everything. So we all took turns and had a chance to climb up on that, shinny up that rope, burn your hands like hell, and get up there and grab the bar in there to look inside to see what it was. And you were just getting filtered light through the other openings around inside there. It was damp smelling in there and everything, but when you stuck your head you could look down there, and I remember seeing that there was a little ticket office. Looked like a regular sentry box. Maybe they put it outside, and when you came there, I don't know if there was a price on it or not, and I don't think there was an elevator in there. There was probably a spiral staircase in there to go up to observe things from the top of that. But that was another thing to try to conquer. Then you'd come down and you'd be weary with holding your arms up there and get burn blisters on your hands. But you know, you'd always say, well, yeah, we saw the inside of that tower up there. It's still up there today. I don't know what's inside, if they ever cleaned it out or not. I know during the war they took that beautiful copper roof off of it because somebody said, yeah, we need the copper, and that they surely didn't, but they actually took the copper that had that weathering, or the green patina, or whatever they call that, and I think they ruined that. But it looked like a castle or a fortress up there. I'm trying to think of some other incidents there. They were very good. Speaking of the flower house, the original flower house up there was a wood frame structure, and it actually had steam pipes running through it, and they did a good job. And when we would go up to ice skate on the lakes in the winter time, we always had to wait for, above all people, a gentleman that was a pilot of the Island Queen was Captain Harry Doss. He would come up there with his skates on, and he'd skate all around that lake up there to test the ice. I guess the Recreation Commission requested that, and he probably did it on a voluntary basis because he was a wonderful ice skater, figure skater at that. And once he like they're supporting his weight, he gave us an okay for everybody to do their ice skating. And we didn't have skating shoes. We just had a pair of skates that you just clamped onto your shoes like you did an old-fashioned pair of skates. And then we'd be up there skating, and boy, our clothing wasn't as adequate as it is today. So after we were almost numb from the cold and that, we'd put our skates over our shoulders and head down for the flower house and go in the flower house, not to see the flowers, just to go in there to thaw out. And we'd walk down through the cactus room and everything like that because the steam pipes kept that place real nice and warm. So it was another haven for